Chapter 26. Plans were being made for JP's big farewell party a few days before his boat sailed for Japan. He was scheduled to leave on a Japanese freighter. It was going to be the biggest party of all time, spilling out of Sean's hi-fi living room, out into the bonfire yard, and up the hill and even over it. JP and I had had our fill of parties, and were not looking forward to it too happily, but everybody was going to be there. All his girls, including Psyche, and the poet Cassoites, and Coughlin, and Alva, and Princess, and her new boyfriend, and even the director of the Buddhist Association, Arthur Wayne, and his wife and sons, and even JP's father, and of course Bud, and unspecified couples from everywhere, who would come with wine and food and guitars. JP said, "I'm getting sick and tired of these parties. How about you and me taking off for the Marin Trails after the party? It'll go on for days. We'll just bring our packs and take off for Potrero Meadows Camp or Laurel Dell." Good. Meanwhile, suddenly one afternoon, JP's sister Rhoda appeared on the scene with her fiancé. She was going to be married in JP's father's house in Mill Valley, big reception and all. JP and I were sitting around in the shack in a drowsy afternoon, and suddenly she was in the door, slim and blonde and pretty, with her well-dressed Chicago fiancé, a very handsome man. "Whew!" yelled JP, jumping up and kissing her in a big passionate embrace, which she returned wholeheartedly. And the way they talked. "Well, is your husband gonna be a good bang?" "He damn well is. I picked him out real careful, you grunge jumper." He'd better be, or you'll have to call on me." Then to show off, JP started a wood fire and said, "Here's what we do up in the real country up north." And dumped too much kerosene into the fire, but ran away from the stove and waited like a mischievous little boy. And broom! The stove let out a deep rumbling explosion way inside that I could feel the shock of clear across the room. He'd almost done it that time. Then he said to her poor fiancé, "Well, you know any good positions for honeymoon night?" The poor guy had just come back from being a serviceman in Burma and tried to talk about Burma, but couldn't get a word in edgewise. JP was mad as hell and really jealous. He was invited to the fancy reception, and he said, Can I show up naked? Anything you want, but come." I can just see it now, the punch bowl and all the ladies in their lawn hats and the hi-fi playing hearts and flowers, organ, music, and everybody wiping their eyes because the bride is so beautiful. What you want to get all involved in the middle class for, Rhoda? She said, "I don't care. I want to start living." Her fiancé had a lot of money. Actually, he was a nice guy, and I felt sorry for him having to smile through all this. After they left, JP said, "She won't stay with him more than 6 months. Rhoda's a real mad girl. She'd rather put on jeans and go hiking than sit around Chicago apartments." "You love her, don't you?" "You damn right. I ought to marry her myself. But she's your sister." "I don't give a goddamn. She needs a real man like me. You don't know how wild she is. You weren't brought up with her in the woods." Rhoda was real nice, and I wish she hadn't shown up with her fiancé. In all this welter of women, I still hadn't gotten one for myself. Not that I was trying too hard, but sometimes I felt lonely to see everybody paired off and having a good time, and all I did was curl up in my sleeping bag in the rose bushes and sigh and say, "Bah." For me, it was just red wine in my mouth and a pile of firewood. But then I'd find something like a dead crow in the deer park and think, that's a pretty sight for sensitive human eyes, and all of it comes out of sex. So I put sex out of my mind again. As long as the sun shined, then blinked and shined again, I was satisfied. I would be kind and remain in solitude. I wouldn't poke about. I'd rest and be kind. Compassion is the guide star, said Buddha. Don't dispute with the authorities or with women. Beg, be humble. I wrote a pretty poem addressed to all the people coming to the party. Are in your eyelids wars and silk, but the saints are gone, all gone, save to that other. I really thought myself a kind of crazy saint, and it was based on telling myself, Ray, don't run after liquor and the excitement of women and talk. Stay in your shack and enjoy natural relationship with things as they are. But it was hard to live up to this with all kinds of pretty broads coming up the hill every weekend and even on weeknights. One time, a beautiful brunette finally consented to go up the hill with me, and we were there in the dark on my mattress, day mat, when suddenly the door burst open and Sean and Joe Mahoney danced in laughing, deliberately trying to make me mad. Either that or they really believed in my effort at aestheticism, and were like angels coming in to drive away the devil, which they did all right. Sometimes when I was really drunk and high and sitting cross-legged in the midst of the mad parties, I really did see visions of wholly empty snow in my eyelids. And when I opened them, I'd see all these good friends sitting around waiting for me to explain. And nobody ever considered my behavior strange, quite natural among Buddhists, and whether I opened my eyes to explain something or not, they were satisfied. During that whole season, in fact, I had an overwhelming urge to close my eyes in company. I think the girls were terrified of this. What's he always sitting with his eyes closed for? Little Prajna, Sean's 2-year-old daughter, would come and poke at my closed eyelids and say, Booba, hack! Sometimes I preferred taking her for little magic walks in the yard, holding her hand to sitting yakking in the living room. As for Jaffe, he was quite pleased with anything I did, provided I didn't pull any boners like making the kerosene lamp smoke from turning the wick too far up, or failing to sharpen the axe properly. He was very stern on those subjects. You've got to learn, he'd say. Damn it, if there's anything I can't stand, it's when things ain't done right. It was amazing the suppers he'd roust up out of his own part of the food shelf. All kinds of weeds and dry roots bought in Chinatown, and he'd boil up a mess of stuff. Just a little. With soy sauce. And then that went on top of freshly boiled rice and was delicious indeed, eating with chopsticks. There, we were sitting in the roar of trees at dusk with our windows wide open still, cold, but going chomp chomp on delicious homemade Chinese dinners. Jaffe really knew how to handle chopsticks and shoveled it in with a will. Then I'd sometimes wash the dishes and go out to meditate a while on my mat beneath the eucalypti. And in the window of the shack, I'd see the brown glow of Jaffe's kerosene lamp as he sat reading and picking his teeth. Sometimes he'd come to the door of the shack and yell, "Whoo!" And I wouldn't answer, and I could hear him mutter, "Where the hell is he?" and see him peering out into the night for his bhikkhu. One night I was sitting meditating when I heard a loud crack to my right, and I looked, and it was a deer coming to revisit the ancient deer park and munch a while in the dry foliage. Across the evening valley, the old mule went with his heart broken. Hee-haw! Broken like a yodel in the wind, like a horn blow by some terribly sad angel. Like a reminder to people digesting dinners at home that all was not well as they thought. Yet it was just a love cry for another mule, but that was why. One night, I was meditating in such perfect stillness that 2 mosquitoes came and sat on each of my cheekbones and stayed there a long time without biting, and then went away without biting.